Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the California High-Speed Rail Authority's Finance and Audit Committee meeting for the February the 9th, 2021. Welcome to you all across the state of California. And again, as we've always wished you, hopefully good health for all of you who are joining us today. We will move forward with today's meeting. Before we turn it back over to the Secretary to explain how those of you who wish to address us today, how this works for you on Zoom or on the telephone. Before we do that, let me acknowledge and for the record that we have Vice Chair Nancy Miller. We have Director Ernie Camacho and Director Jim Gilmetti, so that reflects, along with myself, all the members for this committee. With that, Mo, I believe if you're going to do this, would you explain to the people who wish to address us how this all works?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Good morning. Welcome to the California High-Speed Rail Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Today, we are hosting this meeting via Zoom. In a moment, we will take public comment. First, we want to run through some important technical aspects of this meeting for offering public comment. If you are logged into this meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature, typically located at the bottom of your screen, so that I can call on you to provide your comment. If you're dialing in by phone, pressing *9 will raise your hand and put you into our queue. Speakers will be called in the order that their hand is raised. Once you've been in the queue and your name is called, in the web meeting, please click the prompt on your screen to allow your microphone to be unmuted. On the phone, we will call on you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. At that point, you'll hear a message that you are being unmuted. Once unmuted, it will be your turn to speak. Please slowly and clearly say and spell your first and last name, and if applicable, state the organization you represent. After your introduction, each speaker is allotted 2 minutes to provide comments. Our court reporter is on the line to record those comments. If they need you to spell or repeat something, they may interject. I will notify you when your time is nearly up. At the end of your comment, we will disable your microphone. However, you are welcome to stay on the line to continue watching or listening to the meeting. If you do not wish to provide comment and simply want to watch the meeting, you can do so by logging on to hsr.ca.gov and looking for the link to our live stream.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And the meeting has been brought to order. Do we have anybody from the public who's registered to address us?
I don't see any of the attendees with their hands raised, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. We will then move on with today's agenda items. The first on the agenda is the approval of our January 21st F&A committee meeting minutes. Do we have a motion for approval?
Move approval.
By Director Camacho. A second, please.
Second.
Okay, I think Director Gilmetti, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Thank you. I don't have any remarks today other than to remind everybody that we do have a full board meeting at 11 a.m. this morning. With that, let's move right on into our agenda with first our executive summary from our Chief Financial Officer. Good morning, Mr. Annis.
Good morning, board members. I'll be briefing off the financial report executive summary in your packet. And on the second page of that packet, which is being added to the screen here, is our accounts payable, aging, and disputes report. And happy to again report through the hard work of the project managers and the accounting staff, we've gone 47 months without incurring a late payment penalty and did not have any aged invoices in the December reporting period. So we're almost 4 years of no late payment penalties. The authority currently has 147 disputed invoices with a total of 76.6 million. We did discuss at the last board meeting that the bulk of these are related to the CP2 design builder, Dragados, and some invoices they submitted that included some pending change orders, and we are unable to pay any pending change orders until those are implemented. So that is in the dispute category while those are being worked out. That one contractor represents about 98% of the disputes. So the disputes other than that remain very low. Again, the Dragados, when those are cleared, we should see more of a historical level of disputes in this reporting.
Brian, if I may, just as a matter of process, so if it's simply a matter that they have billed for items that were change orders that the work has not been done, why aren't they? Isn't it just a matter of having them agreeing, or shouldn't they just summarily agree to remove them from the invoice or invoices?
Yeah, I believe a couple things could happen. I mean, in some cases there could be agreement on the change orders that are subject to this, or they could withdraw the invoiced amounts related to those change orders. So I think my understanding is the process issue going forward is likely corrected, where they won't be submitting them change orders that haven't been approved yet. But yet, we want to go through the formal process on these prior submitted invoices just to reconcile them for the making the agreements to end the disputes.
Okay. Since you've been on board, have we had this sort of a problem before that you can recall since you've been with us?
I don't recall this specific circumstance, no.
Okay, thank you.
Tom, this is part of a CPE. This is part of a DFJV commercial strategy as to highlight change orders that they think that they are due and disputed. So this is also goes to the change order process and the disputes process. It's deeper than just telling them not to invoice. We've sent them a letter directing them to stop it, and so the project management is all over this right now.
All right, thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, and bottom half of the report is our cash management. We reflect at the end of December a cash balance in our Proposition 1A bond funding account of $67.8 million. We do have some authority to augment that with what's called commercial paper, which is a monthly borrowing mechanism that occurs between the spring and the fall bond sale. Most of the Prop 1A that's remaining is in the bookends, the Caltrain electrification, LA Union Station, Rosecrans, Northwart. That's where we have remaining unspent appropriations of bond funds, as well as the state operations area where we pay state staff. But the Prop 1A for the Central Valley construction has been exhausted. We also show here the cap and trade cash balance, which was at $1,845 million. I will note that does not yet include the November auction, which was $147 million. We do always wait till we have the formal executive orders from Department of Finance and the controller's action to formally include those in our cash balance. But again, that auction, we have results have been reported, and we're do expect to see that in the balance soon. We'll also note the next cap and trade auction is scheduled for February 17th, and we'll be able to report that certainly at the March board meeting, but also happy to notify the board members when we do get the results from the February auction, which, as we're looking at the market, we do note that the secondary market has prices currently above the floor price for this upcoming auction. So I think signs are good for going into the auction. You never know for sure what the amount of auctions or allowances sold will be, but again, there's no dire signs going into this one, as we saw before the May auction when the cap and trade proceeds were very low.
Brian, how soon after the auction do you get a sense of what we're going to get?
It's about 1 week.
Okay. And on the Prop 1A, before we get the final allocation, are we going to run out of money?
Well, it's sort of dependent on the funding authority or the legislative appropriations as we get into the full board meeting and we're discussing the Prop 1A funding plan. We do need an additional Prop 1A appropriation to fund our Central Valley construction. Because the cap and trade funds, the balance we show here, we expect to be exhausted and spent about middle of next fiscal year in the December to January period next year. And we would need additional Prop 1A bond authority through a legislative appropriation to access that next fiscal year. The third fund that we mention here is a smaller dollar amount. It's the Rail Property Management Fund, and it reflects an ending cash balance of $10 million. Did want to mention to the board that the governor's January budget included a proposal to increase our authorized expenditures out of this fund. This is a fund that is filled right now with our leases of authority-owned property. We do have about 36 properties that are leased, 5 residential and 31 commercial. So when we receive those funds from those lease payments, we put it into this property fund, and we use the fund to for property management type expenses. So it could be repairs of those properties. It could be cleaning up litter or graffiti, security issues, all the things that go along with property management. The current limit on annual expenditures is defined in each year's budget, and it's $750,000. But here, clearly, our fund balance has grown to multiple times our annual expenditure. So our proposal is to increase our annual expenditures to $4 million a year and be able to use more of these funds to offset our property management costs going forward.
Brian, just getting back to Jim's question there a few minutes ago, is there a general policy then on the procedure in which you determine which pot of funds you pay invoices out of each month?
Yes, and it changes a bit over time. Of course, in the early years of Central Valley construction, we were using federal ARA funds primarily. And after that, we switched to Prop 1A funds. And as those became exhausted, we're now funding Central Valley construction out of the cap and trade funds.
Okay.
Next slide, please. So this slide is our administrative budget. The budget for the fiscal year is $73.6 million, with 50% of the fiscal year complete as of the end of December. 21.4 million, or about 30% of the admin budget, has been spent. It's, of course, underutilization relative to the budgeted amount. And that is primarily because we added a number of positions to the authority last year in budget, where we were implementing our what we call the form to function, where we examined roles and responsibilities of consultant and state staff and reduced our consultant staffing and are ramping up our state staffing. So that's a savings that will be realized over time as the positions are filled. But right now we do have a vacancy rate that's 31%, 31.5%. That's down from where we started the year at 37%. But the other statistic that I want to mention here is that the authority has filled 165 positions over the last 18 months, about a rate of 9 positions per month. And that's a gross number of new hires, which accounts for also internal promotions, transfers to other departments, retirements, et cetera. But again, that vacancy rate does continue to fall every month as we continue to hire new staff. Next slide. This is a slide we added last month, and there's not a lot of new information here month over month. The only real update is under the state staff filled positions. It now reflects 244 positions in the table at the top. And then the bar chart is showing our authorized staff and showing that gradual change in the authority where you see state staff growing over time and consultant staff being reduced over time. Next slide. This is our capital outlay budget summary. As reflected in the top table here, our monthly expenditures for December were $80.7 million. And that is composed of a number of categories. I'll start with the construction packages. So the construction packages totaled $68.5 million. And the third bullet here breaks it down by CP. CP1 was 23.3, CP23 was 24.4, CP4 was 20.7 million. If we break that down further, each CP has the design build contractor, as well as right-of-way and other expenditures. But looking at the design build invoices specifically, CP1 was 16.3 million, CP23 was 18.9 million, and CP4 was $16.4 million. The other thing on the bottom table that's reported is project development and our bookend project funding. So you'll note here the monthly expenditures for project development were 5.2 million in December. Cumulative total for project development is 27.5, which is 19% of budget. Bookend projects, which are primarily Caltrain that's being expended at this point. 0 invoices were submitted for December, but fiscal year to date is 27.9 million. No questions, we move on to the next slide. So this slide is indicating our total project expenditures from July 2006 through December 2020. And the expenditures totaled almost $9 billion. And we break them into categories. So our construction expenditures are $6 billion, which is 75% of total expenditures. Project development, $1.3 billion. Local assistance, that's our Caltrain, LA Union Station, the San Mateo grade separation. That's now over $400 million that we've spent on those Bay Area and Southern California projects. And the last 3 categories are support funding that supports state staff doing project development, construction oversight, and administration. The bottom of the page, we provide a summary of our match to the federal ARA funding. Through December, the federal government has approved almost 750 million of invoices we've submitted to them as qualifying as match. They have about 1.55 billion of additional invoices submitted. They're reviewing currently. Those two together sum about 2.3 billion, which represents 92.1% of our state match requirement. And we do have the remaining 200 million in-house that we're processing to submit to the FRA. And as we report in our business plan, we anticipate that will happen in this first quarter of this year. So we're very close to finalizing our submittals to complete the ARA match. Next slide, please. This is our contracts and expenditure report. We note that as of December 31st, the authority has 206 active contracts. Our December 2020 small business utilization rate remains fairly flat here at 21.1%. That rate does represent about a 4.9% increase from what we had about 5 years ago. As of the end of December, there were 574 small businesses. actively working on the high-speed rail program. That included 185 disadvantaged business enterprises and 62 certified disabled veteran business enterprises. Next slide. This is our contingency use, and I think the easiest way to kind of walk through this is the top table and the total at the bottom of the top table. CP1, our contingency authorized in May of 2019 was 1.2 billion, and 865 million of that has been directed through December, leaving 373 million in the contingency. For CP23, the contingency amount was about 1.1 billion. 810 million of that has been utilized, leaving 275 million in the contingency. CP4, 340 million has been was authorized, and 203 million has been used, and leaving a balance of 137 million. And lastly, there's other categories of contingency that total 931 million, and 76 million of that amount has been utilized, leaving $854 million. As we get into the later board meeting today, we'll discuss some of the new forecasts where they're forecast some additional enhanced contingency for these CPs. So that's not reflected in this board reporting that goes through December, but that information will be added over time as the new baseline is presented to the board at a later meeting. In terms of specific use of contingency in December, we did not have any that exceeded the 25 million threshold for board reporting, but I did want to point out the time impact change item that's listed here under CP4, an $11 million settlement. I mentioned that because we do report those when we make payment on slide 5, where we report our construction expenditures, and that one has not been paid as of December. So we're not reporting that on slide 5, but I did want to list it here because it is a implemented change order. And I believe it's also listed in Joe's CVSR reporting as well. Is there an additional slide, Justin?
Brian, can I ask one question? Going back to the other side. What are the other categories of contingency we use that 931 million for?
Sure. So I'm looking at a column on the top chart that says other balances, and if you go down that, there's an unallocated contingency of 420 million. You might be able to see that's remaining. So that is a program-wide contingency. So that's not associated with any of the construction packages, but that's a set-aside contingency for to mitigate risk.
Okay.
The 154 represents, as labeled here, interim use or project reserve. That's a federally required contingency to direct interim use if there's a significant period between full high-speed rail operations and completion of the Madera to Poplar section. And then there's lastly what's called an other contingency, other balance of 280 million. And that is primarily a program management related contingency, things that might cover a rail delivery partner, a financial advisor contract that was recently implemented, things of that nature.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Last slide is our next slide is our what we call internally the flash report. It's kind of the early look at what we report to the board next month. And in some cases, we have invoices submitted and they're under review. In some cases, invoices are still pending. And this is the contract manager's assessment of what they expect to see in the coming day or two. This indicates overall that our capital expenditures for the month of January will be similar to December at about 80 million. Here about 81.1 million. The construction packages, design build contract invoices themselves would be at this point estimated at $56.6 million. Going down to the bottom left here, administrative positions. Looks like for January, an additional 8 vacancies were filled, bringing the vacancy rate now under 30% for January. And on the right, we did not have any activity here on new submittals to the Federal Railroad Administration. We did submit some responses to questions they've asked as they continue to as they continue to review our already submitted invoices. So there was some activity on state match to ARA, but again, we think in this month of February, we'll be submitting some of the new packages that will get us toward full completion of the ARA match. And that completes the executive summary for the Finance Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Brian? All right, well, Brian, we'll look forward to your report in the board meeting on the funding plan. Thank you very much. We'll move now, members will move over to the Central Valley update, and Joe, you're on.
Yes, sir. Let me refer you to tab 10. It is the last tab in your folder. It's the big thick one. The data that we're going to review today is from December of 20. Now, 2 things in December. Actually, there's 3 things that occurred in the month of December. We started to take some inclement weather. Of course, the holiday season with regards to the last 2 weeks of that traditionally slow weeks in the construction industry. But more significantly is this, the 3rd wave of COVID hit us severely. Okay. As I will report in my executive summary, we had 37 quarantines in the month of December. Our CP1 office was severely impacted. Okay. So the 3rd wave was very devastating for us, much more than the previous 2 waves. Okay. As we speak right now, we have kind of normalized that on the tail end of this last wave, as you would expect with regards to, we mimic basically that of the population. Okay. All right. So let me go to the second page. I'm going to refer, this is the executive summary as I've done before. I will refer you to slides and pictures in the presentation that are in back of the executive summary. So let us start with page 13. Okay, page 13, this is kind of an overview slide. It tells you that currently right now, that with regards to our projected ARA spending, we're pretty much on track, right, with 3.1 billion to 3.1 billion. Okay, but more significantly, what it shows you that our current anticipated, and we'll revise this with the rollout of the business plan, is that we need to spend approximately about $5.7 billion as to fully achieve ARA. That includes the tracking systems and all the remaining work in the CPs. Okay. So as you can see right now, about 2.6 left to go. Moving to pages 12 through 14. The state shows you basically the same. Next slide, please. The same slide I just showed previously. Okay, right now, December, you can see that our invoice is about 51.6 to our comparative 81. There is a host of reasons that that's due to. I state that clearly in the write-up. There's really no issues in CP4. As you would expect, CP4 is progressing very well. But again, as you can see, the majority of the impacts that we are incurring in CP1, CP2, 3 are due to first order work and right away. I can answer specific questions as into those causes if you want to go into great detail. If not, I will keep pressing forward.
Go ahead, Joe.
Okay. Right now, change orders for this month. Next slide. Change orders for this month is basically is that right now we are basically there was 18 change orders for a total of $21 million issued throughout all the CPs. The majority of those change orders by number was in CP23, predominantly low value. The highest, greatest one there was about 2.5. Most of these.
Joe, where are you on your, what are we looking at here?
You're looking at total. I'm just kind of reporting back, kind of giving you an overall summary, sir. This
Okay.
is no slide specifically. This is
Okay,
basically talking here on the executive, on the CP design, right at that level, right there. So I'm just pointing out right now that our change orders, as I said, there was 18 issued total for about a total of 21 million. Number wise, majority was in CP23. Predominantly small change orders associated with design and addressing small construction issues. As reported by Brian previously, that we had 2 change orders in CP4. Okay. That included the time impact, right, which was a change order for 32.1. It was issued for approximately 11 million for addressing 158 days of compensatable delay with the average daily rate that was determined through independent audit just under $70,000 per day. Can answer any specific questions that you have with regards to that time impact.
Joe, I don't know if you've got the information, but in determining the charge per day, are you able to give us a bit more background on that?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll let Alexandria, since she led the team with regards to our deputy counsel that predominantly deals with construction. She led the team that was associated with that independent auditor. So she can give you how it was comprised and the rigor that we underwent with regards to using an independent auditor to be able to achieve it. Alexandria, want to give a summary, please?
Yes. So the independent auditor was associated with the firm TM Forensics in San Francisco. His name is Douglas Rapp. He has over 20 years experience with auditing construction projects and testifying as an expert witness in construction litigation. So he conducted basically an audit of the overhead expenses that were recorded by the prime contractor, CRB, on CP4. The auditor obtained a very long list of records, including sensitive trade information in the daily expense report. That information was released pursuant to a confidentiality agreement, but it was released in full. And it showed each and every expense that CRB incurred on the project from the inception of the project until the time of the audit, approximately in May of last year. He also reviewed payroll records and invoices. He went in March of 2020 to the offices of CRB in Wasco, and he met with CRB staff as well as with the project staff to ask questions about invoices and expenses. As a result of that, he was able to ascertain the daily rate, which was about $100,000 less per day than what CRB's original demand was. So he ascertained that there were obviously some expenses that were not overhead expenses. Some expenses were claimed which were not truly time-related expenses. And he also consulted the national database for salaries and wages and ascertained that some executive salaries were way above average. So he adjusted the daily value to basically bring it down to the national average. The audit was very exhaustive. It took 6 months, and it was extremely comprehensive. It included about 24 hours of interviews just with the project team, and probably another 8 to 10 hours with CRB.
Okay. I want to point out though that this is probably some of the best work the authority has done here, in the sense that the original TIA was for about 294 days. As a result of being very proactive, we were able to reduce that by a total of 136 days by being proactive. That proactive basically came about doing work out of sequence. We made a $2 million investment as into advance out of sequence work, right? The result was a $9 million savings. So hats off to the team. They did a very good job here.
Okay, let me ask a question. So Joe, or Alexandra, when you're calculating the charge per day, first of all, does it mean that the entire project, the entire contract of CP4, were they at a standstill?
No, sir.
Okay, so if they were not, does it mean that the charge is only, I can see how it could be complex to some extent, but the charge is only on the loss on that portion of the contract that they're not working on, and that they are claiming that's our responsibility or our fault? Is that the way that works?
Yes, sir. What ends up happening in this case is this. We ended up extending the substantial completion, right, to 12, 15, 21. That's current what the substantial completion is right now. So what we did is we pushed the end out, the substantial completion, to account for this delay, the 158 days of delay.
And so then when you're calculating, or when I guess the forensic accountant, when he's calculating what the daily charge is, he has gone right into the weeds on specifically that portion of the contract which is not moving forward, the result of which they're suggesting was the fault of the authority. So how do they, what goes into the definition of calculating that number? Obviously salaries or whatever, but are we sure, are we able to be sure that we're not being charged for things that are inconsistent with their claim for loss?
So in this case, the answer to your question is no. This audit's very thorough. One of the things that we negotiated is that our auditor went into CRB's books and was able to validate basically all of their claim charges in their accounting system. All right, so they're very high rigor here to extended basically to this extended overhead. We left them whole for this 158 days. That was the concept, to leave them whole. They received no profit, right? No home office overhead, which just to leave them whole as the result of this 158-day extension.
Okay.
Now, we also, during this 158 days, please understand, we did not just sit still.
You did not get what? I'm sorry, Joe.
We did not sit still.
Okay.
Right? Again, is the adage of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Any utility moved is a good utility, right? Any work started is good work started, regardless if it's on critical path or not on critical path. The focus is just get it done wherever we can get it.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions from the F&A committee?
Thank you, Alexandra. Good job.
Again, hats off to the CP4 team. It did a great job in working with the contractor as in to minimize this delay and the impact. Again, as contractor originally asked for 294 days. So some good work all around. Being very proactive, very aggressive. Okay, let me get back to this executive summary here, please. Also, too, I want to point out, this is another big significant fact here, is that in April of this year, we expect to have all of the major designs complete for all 119 miles. A significant milestone, because with these designs complete, we're assured of third-party coordination and a finalization of all of our right-of-way requirements. So hats off to the team. They've been aggressively pushing for the last couple of years to complete these designs. So that means that we have our hands around the scope. Now, I'm on slide.
Hey, Joe, it's Brian. I'm sorry. I just want to add for the board members by CP where those stand on the design. That is a big milestone and a very important one so that we, as Joe indicated, we have our hands around the needed right-of-way. We know exactly what's needed on third-party agreements to complete this. And as we sit today, CP4 is 100% designed. CP1 is about 93% designed. And CP23 is approaching 90% design. So again, by April, we'll have them all designed, but this is an important thing for us to know exactly the final things we need to put in place to complete the work. So I just want to inform you where we are by CP on that issue.
Thanks, Brian. Go ahead, Joe.
Yes, sir. Let me get back to the executive summary. Let's go back to page 15, which was the labor chart. Okay. You can see here what we've been able to achieve. This is the fifth consecutive month of over 1,000 workers on site. A slight dip down, as you would expect, due to those three factors I spoke about: inclement weather, the holidays, and COVID. Again, this is the most severest we've ever been hit by COVID. We had a quarantine that jumped by 30 personnel, predominantly on our CP oversight staff and CP1. Okay. All right, moving to slide 16. As you can see, we're slightly behind in the guideway. We did not increase any miles in the guideway, but in 2-3, we have about 7 miles. As soon as it dries out just a little bit here, we'll be able to pick up about an additional 7 miles. So I expect us to be very close to being back on target.
Thanks for the response for the schedule below this, Joe. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Okay. Now also too, we have 56 of 93 structures underway. This is significant. Okay. This keeps climbing. We're a little bit below, but I expect in the next, we've been really pushing for some of these first order work and some of this row is that predominantly CP23, they have what I call structures down there that are single impact. We have 8 structures right now that are being held by one single impact. We are pushing on those. As soon as those single impacts are free, then you're going to see between now and the summer, a lot of those structures freeing up, which will be a great increase. I'd like to keep pushing here is, especially predominantly in CP23, some of their longer structures, getting some of those underway predominantly here. Hopefully we can close the right of way in Deer Creek, which is a little over 3,000 foot long structure there. So that would be very, very good there. Okay. All right, utility relocations. This is another thing, probably the one thing I pay closest attention to right now. There is a total of 2,059 utilities that have to be relocated. As we speak right now, we have 1,141 that have been relocated or in the processes of being relocated. So that's significant. Okay, we keep closing this number. We got 18 underway during the month of December. So even in a holiday month, you can see the drive and push. First order work frees up these sites. Okay. Now, moving to small business charts, which is page 17. Okay, as we speak right now, we're predominantly holding right just below 18%. Right, you can see that blue line here. You can see that gradient came up a little bit. It's kind of holding the gradient, which means we're being very consistent. We've had basically right below 18% to compare to the 30% goal. But I need to put this in context. 18% in the construction industry is significant. Okay. Predominantly on the major mega projects that I've been involved in, we've strove hard for 10%. So this 18% is an achievement. Not what our goals, our contracts require, but we are making progress. There was a $16 million increase basically during the month of December too. Okay. So we are pulling up. Hopefully we'll be able to, I'd like to get this up. My personal is I'd like to push this up during the summer, come out a little bit above the 20%. See if we can drive into 20 below 20s. Okay. All right. Now, with a drum roll, we'll move to right away. That's pages 18 through 21. Okay. Let me kind of summarize this right now. Currently, right now, I'm on the row parcel acquisition summary. It's that one table that's towards the top. Okay. We need currently right now about 2,290 parcels. Okay. Now, we're able through design refinements, we were able to basically brought that down by 14 parcels last month, which is a very, very good sign. Again, as I indicated, as we start finishing our designs, we're able now to start eliminating the need for these parcels that we put in placeholders. We've acquired 1,781 parcels. That gives us, with these numbers, about 509 to go. We will, by next month, we will drop below 500, which is a significant milestone for the project. Now, next slide, please. All right. Again, is orange is what we've delivered. Green are what we call delinquent, are not delivered. Okay, so anything from the left of December back is what we refer to as a delinquent parcel. Remember, every parcel we have right now is linked to the construction schedules. Okay, so as I speak right now is this. We delivered 45 parcels in December total to the design build contractor. Now, that 45 is spread both now in the rears, in the present, and in front of us. Okay, we account for every parcel when we deliver it to the right month that it goes. Okay. Now, okay. Remember, anything to the left of December, by definition, is called a delinquent parcel. It's parcels that we need to deliver to maintain schedule and tempo with regards to our construction. We have 43 current delinquent parcels as we speak. Okay. We are going back right now. We've been working this structure, this deliberate process, this rigor for approximately the last year. Okay. Now, as a result of the court impacts with COVID, with delays, right, with regards to getting more certainty as into what parcels we're going to have to take with condemnation, we're going back as we speak right now, revising these road dates, a little bit more certainty, acknowledging those risks, giving those back to the contractors. We're going to rev, right, the baseline schedules again. Because this is this whole process. Be dynamic, be proactive. Right? Look for ways that we can be proactive as try to mitigate some of these delays. And that's what we're perpetually working on. Now, the parcels that I'm most concerned about, I'm most focused on, there's a test question in engineering 101 and scheduling. It says basically is, what is the most significant delay that you can take? Right? The answer is day for day, except if you're a high-speed rail. There's what I call day for year parcels. These are parcels, okay, that are associated, we know what they are, they're associated with utility moves. Some of the utility moves, especially with the transmission, right? You cannot move transmission, relocate transmission lines during the high peak energy period of the summer. So you're forced basically to move. Some of the irrigation, you have to move them in the off season, and gas lines, you have to move during the summer, opposite of electricity. We track those. We've marked each one of those parcels as an indication of what we call a priority one parcel. Those are our most focused parcels that we keep driving on. Again, all this is right now very coherently linked from road production all the way into the construction production. Next slide, please. You can see here, as I keep reporting, railroad parcels are not an issue. Our agreements are solid. We're able to deliver them just in time so that we don't delay the railroad. So no issues with regards to railroad parcels. Next slide, please. Land conveyances, as you can see, way ahead of the power curve here. The one land conveyance that we were not able to get had nothing to do with the land conveyance process. It has to do with the right-of-way process. You must own the property before you can convey its land rights as a predecessor activity to it. Okay? But you can see Dennis Kim and right-of-way here doing a great job. This is, again, a testament to cooperative work, to changing the authority. This is predominantly driven by the PG&E, resetting ourselves with PG&E.
Joe, just for people who are listening and maybe for us too, is another word for land rights conveyance? Is it an easement?
Easements, franchises.
Okay. I just think that people who are listening probably are far more familiar with it. I'm not suggesting you change it, but just so people understand it's akin to an easement to go across or do something in somebody else's property that you've got a legal right to do.
We're not giving this issue is not regards to the fee, the underlying fee of the parcel, but again, just giving somebody access long-term.
Sure. Got
predominantly
it.
It's tied to these utilities work.
Right.
Where you relocate a utility on our property or on UP's property, that you restore that right back to utilities.
Right.
Next slide, please. Here, predominantly no issues with regards to these third-party agreements. Basically, everything is driving. There's no big holes here. Semi-tropic board's meeting tomorrow. Hopefully we can push this through. I've been in direct coordination with their director, their CEO down there. Okay. Next slide, please. Again, this is just more of the same third-party agreements. Okay. Now, what's good about these third-party agreements with these designs completing here, right? This is the key to this, is that as designs complete, you force third parties to give their consensus to the design. If there is an issue, that issue will surface during the design review. That's the way to drive this process, and that's what we've been driving on. Next slide, please. This then basically wraps this up. We can go through and go through each of the CPs. I'd like, though, to kind of jump over these CPs unless you have any specific information that you want on the CPs. I'd like to jump basically now to pages 57 through 59. Okay. This is predominantly the slides here. I want to point out here, you're going to hear CEO Kelly emphasize this today. Okay. Slowly, surely, consistently, right? The Office of Program Delivery is, with legal support, is making gains on each of the remaining segments. Okay. So I want to point out basically is that in December, we got out the revised draft EIR supplement draft to our cooperating agencies, okay, in the San Jose to Merced. And then in mid-July, in Palmdale to Burbank, we're going to get basically the admin draft, EIR, EIS, up to our cooperating responsible agencies, right? And we'll have the final out in Burbank, Los Angeles, in mid-January. So again, is slowly, surely making success here, right? And as you, Brian, Kelly, will amplify in this. With regards to the segments to the north, the east side of the Y and the LGA, right? We are preparing, excuse me, we are preparing, getting ready to implement the stage gate process as in to start advancing those designs to come to more certainty with regards to the construction and to be able to make informed decisions with regards to the future acquisition of those recommendations to the board. Okay. We're preparing ourselves, getting ready for that. As the business plan prepares and finalizes, we'll be in a position to start that work immediately. And that rolls up my summary. Open to questions and comments by the FNA, please.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions for Joe? Okay, I don't hear any, Joe. Thank you. Good job. And does any member have anything that you want to raise before we adjourn today, either, or any questions for Brian Ennis or for Joe Hedges? Hearing none, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the agenda for today's FNA meeting. Again, reminding you that our board meeting will start at 11 o'clock this morning. Thank you for joining us, and good morning. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. See you at 11.